guys, I am Pixel Dan, and this is a review of the Masters of the Universe Origins Beastman Savage Henchman. That is right. Continuing on with my look at the very first wave of this brand new line hitting retail stores right now, let's dive in and take a look at what many would assume to be Skeletor's number one henchman, Beastman. Of course, he was one of those original 8-back figures from the original line, so cool to see him making an appearance right here in the first wave, right here on that retro-inspired card back, which is gorgeous. I've talked about it enough at this point, but I just love that it's inspired by that original card back. Really does give you the nostalgic feels. And of course, this line is meant to be a retro-styled toy line, just with some more articulation added in. In fact, it tells you that right there in that yellow burst on the front of the packaging. So we got that old school style blister bubble fully showcasing Beastman, as well as the same mini comic behind him that we've seen with all of the Series 1 figures. And then when we rotate this around to the backside, at the top of the card back, we've got to talk about that absolutely gorgeous new artwork. Man, the colors on this one just really pops. I mean, look at this. This is amazing. You got Beastman using his powers to control animals. You got this crazy looking lion with a spiked tail. There's like a dragon pterodactyl thing in the background, another purple dragon thing. Man, it's amazing. I love the colors. I love the gorgeous artwork. It's absolutely a standout on these figures, and hopefully that is the plan going forward on all these figures, because that artwork really does drive home that whole nostalgic feeling about this line. That is awesome. And then down below that, we've got an illustrated cross-sell showing you all 6 figures in the first wave, as well as the action feature callout, which basically lets you know that you can fit the whip into his hand and you can twist him into powerful battle positions. Just showing his articulation, but real fun stuff. Great card backs, as I've said, with all of these Series 1 reviews. So let's go ahead and get Beastman pulled out of the packaging to get a closer look at him. All right, we've got Beastman outside of the packaging, and once again, tape measure to show you guys that these stand at the 5.5-inch scale, just like the vintage toy line, and it's obvious looking at these that they are modeled after those vintage action figures. Of course, we've got new points of articulation added, but even with that, the knees still stand at a bend. They've got those kind of squat poses, and with Beastman, it does look like he's got those longer forearms with the fur kind of sculpted in, so he does sort of have that gorilla or primate type look to him that the original action figure had. So really cool stuff there, and I know we've kind of talked about this to death at this point. This is the last figure of Series 1 that I've taken a look at this point, and I think it's very clear Mattel's direction with this line. I mean, these are retro-inspired figures. They're supposed to look just like the vintage toys, and they did so even all the way down to the way the paint deco works on these. So you can see that the armor that he's wearing, the shoulder pieces, they're all cast in a kind of maroonish color. And then there's just this little spray of blue over the front emblem. You can see it's not totally detailed out. It's not fully painted. Just that spritz of blue, because that's exactly how it was on the vintage toy. So they're using that level of detail where they're actually trying to mimic the paint deco from the vintage figures, because they basically want these to be new retro toys, new vintage toys. I don't know. That's totally what they're going for with this. Beastman's head looks very similar to that, got the blue paint under the eyes, but one of the things that's different is he's got his mouth closed, like he's gritting his teeth. The vintage figure had an open mouth, and that's kind of been par for the course with all of these figures. While they do try to mimic the vintage figures, all of the facial expressions are different than what we saw on the vintage toys, so that's what's going on there. So the armor on the arms is removable. In fact, it comes off in the packaging. You have to put it on yourself, but it works very similar to the vintage toy line. You just, clip it on the back. You got the little pegs there. You can do the same thing with the main armor. You can remove it if you want to. It's a bit more soft and pliable when compared to the vintage armor, which was a little more rigid, but I think that's a good thing because it's flexible and it's easy to attach to the figure. So otherwise, you can see he's brightly colored. He's got that very bright orange color. He does still have the nice little claw kind of sculpted onto the back of his right hand, which is a detail straight off the vintage toy line. So it's really nice to see it still there. And, a lot of those same little details like the ears and, like the furry-ish beard, all of that does come straight off the vintage figure. So they did a nice job mimicking the look of the original toy. So the one big difference, of course, is the articulation on these guys. Beastman does function the same as what we've seen on the other figures so far. With that head on the ball joint, you got the ball-like joints at the shoulder, so the arms can go outwards, forwards, and backwards. You do have the swivels at the elbow. You've got the bends at the elbow, swivels, and hinges at the wrist. You can turn them at the waist. You got the hinge-like ball joints at the thighs, so legs can go outwards, forwards, and backwards. You can swivel at the knee. You can bend at the knee. Beastman is not wearing boots. He's the only figure in this wave so far. You can see he's got the furry shins, but they still added the cut where the boot cut would be, so you can still swivel there. Of course, that does look a little strange when you turn a shin sideways like that, but I mean, if we think about it in reality, it's always weird being able to turn the shin. Anyway, and then the ankle can move forwards and backwards as well as go side to side. So the articulation functions the same on Beastman. And oh my goodness, we popped the armor off there. So I guess that's something you need to watch for on the arms. Let me see if we can we just got to bend this back around and reattach it here. Guess that is definitely something worth noting if you're posing him around. It seems like it's pretty easy to knock that shoulder armor off. But there you go. Yep. And, you know, the articulation is nice and solid on these guys. I will say that has been that way across the board. The construction feels good and sturdy on these. They definitely feel like toys that could be played with. And, of course, they've got the interchangeability going on there. They're totally modular. You can remove the heads. You can remove them at the shoulders, the wrists, the torso, and the boots, which will be really interesting on Beastman here. Let's do it. Yeah, see? Look at that. Just to pull his legs off. Just break him at the shins. But yeah, that way you can mix and match parts between the figures, which is, of course, great for customization. So the only accessory Beastman comes with, aside from the armor pieces we have to put on, is his whip. And it is almost identical to the one from the vintage line, although I will say it's a bit more sturdy. It's not like flexible. I always remember the old Beastman whips feeling like they were always chewed up, like kids always chewed on them for some reason as a kid. But you know, we got a string there, so it's an actual string. What's funny about this to me is that they modeled it exactly like the one from the original toy. And if you guys don't know, the original one came from the Big Jim toy line originally, which is why it was too big for Beastman and why he can't actually grip the handle. He has to grip the finger guard. Yeah, so the new one was made exactly the same. So it's like just styled just like the vintage one. It's too big. The only way he can hold it is if he holds onto the finger grip. And I don't know, to me, that's hilarious that they decided to stick with that and give him an oversized whip that doesn't really fit with the figure. But you know what? There you go. It's just like the vintage toy. All right, guys, it's comparison time. So I keep talking about that vintage Beastman action figure, so let's bring him in side by side so you can see the two figures standing there. You can see the differences and the similarities between the two designs. And just for fun, since I've been doing it with all of these, let's go ahead and display them next to the most recent line, being the Masters of the Universe Classics version of Beastman. Of course, these are two totally different types of figures, with Classics being that collector-driven, highly detailed, lots of paint deco, much more expensive figure, versus the Origins line, which is the retro-style mass-market $15 figure. But I wanted to show them side by side just so you can see the differences between the two. And with that, that's the look at all of Series 1 of Masters of the Universe Origins. And, you know, by this point, I think I've gotten kind of used to what this line is. To be perfectly honest, I had a hard time getting out of my own headspace when talking about this line, because Masters of the Universe Classics is so fresh in my mind, and it was such an amazing, perfect line, near perfect. You're never going to have a 100% perfect line, but you guys know what I mean. I loved Masters of the Universe Classics. And don't get me wrong, Vintage Masters is still probably my all-time favorite toy line, but I don't know, there was something weird about going back to this vintage style after Classics, and I just kind of couldn't get that out of my head for a while. But you know what? We've looked at all these figures now. I think I've got it all figured out. Mattel was very clear in their PowerCon panel what they were doing with this, and then they went and announced a new 7-inch collector's line anyway, which is going to live right alongside these. So going forward, I just need to stop trying to compare these so much to Classics, because there's no reason for it. They are their own thing. They are retro styled figures. They are meant to appeal to the people who love the vintage toys, or get kids on board with these figures that want to play with them. And if you're not into that, that is totally cool. There is nothing wrong with that. And Series 1 is just now starting to trickle out into Walmart stores. Mattel says that a lot of the Walmarts seem to be holding them back for the fall reset, but the good news is that these will not be exclusive come 2021. And Mattel says there will be plenty of these going around. They're going to put waves 1 and 2 back into production at the beginning of 2021 when all retailers can carry them, including online retailers. So hopefully it's just a matter of time before these are much easier to come by, because I definitely want kids to be able to experience these too. It feels like these were made with kids in mind, not just collectors. And that, I guess, with Beastman is my final thoughts on the first wave of Masters of the Universe Origins. Wave 2 went up for pre-order just recently on Walmart's website. They were only on sale for like an hour before they sold out. But again, hopefully they will be readily available, especially once we're into the new year. They're not supposed to be coming out, I don't think, until November-ish. So we have a little bit of a breather until then, and hopefully these get into more people's hands. Guys, thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, hit that like button, leave me a comment, let me know what you guys think, and don't forget to subscribe. Until next time.